Hello, my name is Aaron Levi Daniel Smith, and I will be presenting the Spanish Grammar Summary Part 2. I'll be dealing with all forms of the verbs and their irregulars and their uses. Right? So let's begin. These would be the topics I'm covering. Right? The subjunctive is a large topic, so I'll spend a little more time on that. Right? So we'll begin with the present tense. They are formed by adding these highlighted here. So just learn off the endings, right? Some verbs are irregular in the present tense only in the first person singular, right? So, for example, estar goes to estoy and poner goes to pongo, right? But it continues its regular conjugations, right? So you can take a note of these. You can pause the video at any time. You can take notes. Let's go on to the irregular verbs ending in AR and ER. Now, these are more radical changing and the pronunciation changes also. Right? So for example, contar goes to cuento, cuentas, cuenta, but it remains in the nosotros form, right? Contamos and entendemos, right? So just take a little note of that. There are IR verbs that change in the present tense, right? And these stems change from E to I and E to IE, right? So for example, we have pedir, which means to ask for, to request. Pido, and then in nosotros form, it's pedimos, right? So just note these changes in the irregulars. Mentir means to lie, so it's miento, but it changes back mentimos. So note the endings. I'm sorry, the stems, the changes. Dormir means sleep, so you say yo duermo, I sleep, but we sleep, nosotros dormimos. Right? So take a bit of a note of that. The present tense is used for the following: to describe a habitual action or state of affairs. Right? This one is very important. Right? So you say that I sleep a lot on Sundays. Yo duermo mucho los domingos. Previously, you would know that when translating dates, we don't say en domingos, we say los domingos. Right? A little note here. Every time that you see an I, there would be an accent on it due to the font I'm using. But in Spanish, I've made sure and removed the accents on the I where there isn't an accent. Right? So for example, if you had aquí, you'd say AQUI accent. So you'd see an accent like this. Right? So for future reference, that's how it is, so that you get the correct spelling. Right? In questions to get instructions, you say yo pago ahora o después. Do I pay now or later? Right? So you use the present tense. Inherent characteristics, right? You want to say that I am a Trinidadian, Aaron is Trinitario, or Peter is listo. Later on, I would explain the differences between es listo and está listo. Es listo means wise, and estar listo means ready, right? So Peter is wise, right? And Aaron is Trinidadian. To make general statements that are true, so you can say that you would see this a lot, especially when I went to Venezuela. I saw that smoking is tobacco damages health, right? Right? For future intention, the present tense can also be used. So, por ejemplo, el vuelo de Venezuela llega a las 4 de la tarde, right? The flight from Venezuela will arrive at 4 p.m., right? But we use the present tense because it can also be translated. It is arriving, right? But it implies the future, right? Now on to the continuous forms of the verb. Now these are very important, especially when you're talking about actions that are in progress at the time of speaking, right? They can be used with all tenses, but mainly used as indicated here in the present and the imperfect, right? So we're gonna I made reference to estoy and estaba, which means I am and I was, right? So I am talking, I was talking. I am eating, I was eating. I am writing, I was writing, right? And the same applies here. Please note the accents, right? So por ejemplo, las chicas están comiendo. The girls are eating, right? Estaban tomando tragos en el bar. They were having shots at the bar, right? So estaban tomando and están comiendo, right? Please note you can also include the imperfect, which I would explain a bit later. Tomaba cervezas en el bar. They were having beers in the bar. Right? You can use the imperfect to indicate was and a continuous action that was being done. Right? Just a little note, because sometimes it can be confusing. Oír, leer, caer, creer, traer. These are the stems, right? And instead of adding yendo to form the gerund, sorry, this is I. This is a normal I. Sorry for the font. Right? Instead of adding yendo, we add yendo, right? Over here. So we have oyendo, leyendo, cayendo, creyendo, trayendo. Right? So it's bringing, believing, falling, reading, listening, hearing. Sorry. Right? IR verbs have a change in the vowel of the stem in the third person singular of the partridge have the same change in the gerund, right? So, for example, durmió, right? He, she, or it slept. You use the stem here, and you continue. Durmiendo, sintiendo, muriendo, pidiendo, viniendo, repitiendo, diciendo, sirviendo, right? Just a little note. Poder and ir, right? They have a little change here. Right? So they just have pudiendo, but it continues with the yendo. But ir yendo. I'm going, estoy yendo. Right? The gerund. These are the uses of the gerund. Right? You can pause the video and you can write this down. Right? Los exámenes siguen siendo difíciles para mí. Examines continue to be difficult for me. Right? So after this, right, we add in siendo. This is a normal I, sorry. Siendo para mí. Right? This is very important, right? Juan va mejorándose, right? It is used to indicate gradually recovering or gradually doing something, right? Right? When you include va before them, right? With verbs of perception, such as these, the infinitive or the gerund can be used, right? So los oímos cantar or los oímos cantando. We hear them sing on or singing. Right? The gerund is never used after preposition. We use the infinitive. Right? Okay. The perfect tense. This describes an action that has begun in the past and is continuing now. Right? This is how we form the imperfect. Sorry, the perfect tense. Right? And then we add the relevant participle. Right? Which would be ado for AR verbs and ido for IR and ER verbs. So you'd say he mandado, I have sent. Right? Okay, good example. Isabela ha decidido a terminar nuestra relación. Isabella has decided to finish our relation or end our relationship. Right? I guess she didn't want to be with me or something. Right? Okay. I've made a list of irregulars here. So you should just learn off these. I believe it's yeah, you can just learn off all these, right? I've indicated absolver, right? If you want to sound smart, right? To absolve means to spare punishment, especially dealing in law, right? So you can say absuelto, ha sido absuelto. He has been absolved or spared punishment, right? So you just have to learn these off. We're on to the preterite tense. Now, the preterite tense of the regular verbs are formed as follows. Sorry. Right? So you can just take a note of these. Right? So I've used it in an example here. Ellos tomaron cricks con queso para la cena. Right? They had cricks with cheese for dinner. Right? Tomaron, note well. Aron, you add that as the stem. Right? Porque llamé a Isabela ayer, ella decidió regalarme un anillo. Right? Because I called Isabella yesterday, she decided to give me a gift. A ring as a gift, sorry. Right? Regalar means to give as a gift. these 12 common irregular verbs ought to be learned, right? Because it's sometimes you can make a mistake, right? But they are very common, right? Because we use dar, decir, hacer, poder, poner, querer, saber, and venir a lot, right? So these don't follow the rules before, right? Also, you should learn estar, ser, ir, and ver. But please note that ser and estar have this exact same conjugations, right? They can be distinguished because generally when you're using ir in the portrait, you say ir a. So you see fui a, fuiste a, fuimos a, fueron a. Right? The radical change in verbs and auto. These are the verbs that are changing spelling, right? So, for example, verbs that end in car, right? You change the C to QU, right? So, por ejemplo, sacar becomes saque, sacaste, etc. Right? Verbs ending in GAR becomes GUE, right? For example, here, llegar becomes llegué, llegaste, right? So note these spelling changes. They are generally, you can learn them here and you can apply them for other words, right? Empezar becomes empecé, empezaste, etc. Right? So these are verbs ending in ZAR. Becomes C. Right? But they return to their. Now, third person IR verbs sometimes give a lot of people trouble, but when we were discussing the IR verbs earlier, using pedir and dormir also, right? We've noticed that durmió, right, and pidió, same thing, but they are only changed in the portrait in the third person. So just note that, right? Only in the third person they are changed. Notice that they continue conjugating normal. Dormí, iste, io, imos, iron, but the change in spelling occurs where they were irregular in their third person. And this should be an R singular. Sorry. The preterite is used for the following, right? That is something that's been completely finished and defined in a definitive time, right? So cuando mi hermana entró en mi casa, right? When she entered into my house, right? Just a little note: salir de and entrar in, right? You don't, every time you're leaving, you salir de, so it's a preposition that must follow. And entrar in, you enter into, right? So, por ejemplo, let's continue. Yo escribí muchas cartas ayer, right? This terminology ayer indicates that it has been completed yesterday. So we use escribí. Because you might have been tempted to use escribía, right? You were writing a lot of letters yesterday, right? Or just a quick note here. Remember earlier I said that saber means to taste, right? So supo would be the irregular third person, which means tasted very delicious, right? El señor Jorge Maxwell Richards fue presidente de Trinidad y Tobago por 10 años, right? O yo fui estudiante del colegio de Ashe Boys por 3 años, right? And I've specified the time, right? So we can use fui. I went. Sorry, I was. Sorry. See how it's easy it's to confuse the both, but there's not fui a, so I wasn't going to a student. You know, if you understand what I mean. I was a student, right? The imperfect tense. Now, you should ask your teacher to explain them in detail, the difference between the imperfect tense and the perfect tense, as this is just a revision, a quick summary of how much I can fit in so much time, right? So just note these endings in red, right? The irregulars, I believe there's only 3, which would be ser, ir, and ver, right? You just learn these off, right? These are what the imperfect tense are used for, right? So, repeated events or habitual actions in the past, right? You can say los fines de semana íbamos a la discoteca y regresábamos a eso de las 3 de la madrugada. On weekends, we used to go to the disco. We usually returned around 3 a.m. Sorry, right? So the word usually shows that it was repeated events or habitual actions in the past, right? To describe stuff in the past. So yo era jovencito, I was a teenager or youth. Note jovencito is youth, right? Like a teenager, right? If an action is interrupted by a completed action it was going on in the past, we use the imperfect tense. So this is an example where the imperfect is used with the partner, right? So estaba esperando a mi novia cuando sonó el teléfono, right? I was waiting on my girlfriend when the phone rang, right? So the phone rang, sonó would be portrait, and estaba esperando, I was waiting, right? So this was interrupted by the completed action, so, right? It's also used for setting the scene. You can describe stuff this way, right? Please note desafortunadamente means unfortunately, right? If the one difference between the portrait and the imperfect is that there's not a clear specified period here, right? So if you want to say las damas estaban en San Fernando buscando un empleo, right? The ladies, sorry, were in San Fernando looking for a job, right? I did not say they were looking for a job during what, I don't know, Monday to Friday. If they were Monday to Friday, then we would have been tempted to use the project. It is also used with querer for polite requests, right? This can also be used with the conditional, right? Quería or quisiera or whatever you want to use. It really doesn't matter. No quería or, right? In time expressions, when the pluperfect would be used in English, right? So we would have, in English, we would say he had been waiting for the letter for a week, but here they use the imperfect, esperaba, right? Please note that hacía is used for the past. So, for example, say it has been 4 days or something, hace 4 días, right? So we use hace and the amount of time, but since it's past tense we're talking about, we use hacía. Right? You can check a grammar book for more explanation, but it's just a quick summary I'm trying to. Okay? The future tense. You just add these highlighted to the infinitives to form the future tense, right? Now the irregulars are as follows, so you should just learn them off, right? I've highlighted this stem, right, and you just continue adding on the relevant a, as, a, emos, right? So just write them down and learn them, right? Also note that all verbs that derive from the irregular verbs will also have an irregular stem, right? So, por ejemplo, mantener will have mantendre and not mantenere, right? Mantendre. And you continue on, right? The future tense is used to talk about future events, right? So something will take place, tendrá lugar, right? If there's a supposition or probability, right? What time is it? I suppose it's 1 o'clock. Será la una, sorry. Será la una. You can just scratch that off. Right? If this is a probability here, if I'm asking where is David, right? David no está aquí, estará en casa. He isn't here, he's probably at home, right? Right? So a little note here, ir a plus infinitive is used to express future, right? So we generally use this, right? El lunes vamos al cine, right? Monday we are going to the cinema, or we will go to the cinema, right? Now we're on to the conditional tense. This tense is a bit complex to be used, and I use it very frequently, but it's a bit complex at times and hard to understand, so I've tried to summarize it as best as I can if you just read the slides, right? Generally, this just is the would tense. Everything with would more or less be used with this tense, right? So, hablaría con Isabela sobre mis problemas. Right? I'll talk to Isabella about my problems. Right? The irregulars, however, please note, are the same 12 as in the future tense. So it will be diria, ria, podria, etc. Right? So just when you're forming them, you just get back the stem, right? And you add ia, ias, ia, iamos, ian, right? These are the uses of the the conditional tense, right? This one is very important because it's introducing the subjunctive in the past tense, right? The past subjunctive, tuviera el dinero. So, si yo tuviera el dinero, iría al cine contigo. Please know that it's a normal I, right? So, if I had money, I would go to the cinema with you, right? Now, ya sabía que abrirían la tienda a las 8, right? Abrirían, right? That they would open the store at 8 o'clock, right? Just take a quick note of this. ¿Qué hora sería? Sería a las 8, right? It was probably 8 o'clock. It's used for past, right? And as we stated earlier, será would be used for the present, right? So, por ejemplo, sería interesante estudiar portugués. It would be interesting to study Portuguese, right? Okay, this is another difference between the future tense and the conditional tense, right? The conditional tense is also used for advice. ¿Cuál coche comprarías? Right? So, ¿cuál coche comprarías? Which car would you buy? Right? Just note that when you're telling somebody they ought to do something, if you use it in a conditional sense, it sounds a bit more polite, right? So deberías de estudiar español por lo menos 3 veces cada semana, right? You should study Spanish for at least 3 times a week, right? Just note that vez is used as time when there's an occasion, right? But tiempo is the general word for time, right? Okay, just these 2 little notes here. Me gustaría, me encantaría, I would like, or I would love. You can use this in your papers, right? Now, compound tenses, right? These are formed by haber and the relevant past participles. By the way, escrito is irregular, which means written, right? This is the pluperfect tense, right? So we have the imperfect of haber and the imperfect and the participles, right? So cuando llegamos al cine, los otros ya habían entrado. When we arrived at the cinema, the others had already gone in, right? So that's an example there. The future perfect, it's the same thing. Form the future tense and you add these, right? The future perfect tense can often be translated as must have, may have, or might have, right? So, por ejemplo, Paula habrá sabido nada de él, right? Paula must have known nothing about him, right? The conditional perfect tense, you just use the conditional of haber, sorry, and the participles, the relevant participles, right? And this is generally used to indicate a past action which would have happened, right? So, si mi mamá no me hubiera dado dinero, no habría ido a la fiesta. My mother hadn't given me money, I would not have gone to the party, right? Now, the subjunctive. This is a large chunk of Spanish, right? And should be read in depth, but I've just included the basics. Basically, it's everything you need to know. It's just you need to practice the subjunctive to get a good grasp of it, right? So just note that the regular endings of ER and IR verbs are now here, and the regular endings of AR verbs are just here, right? So it's just a big switch around, alright? Just keep note of cuente, contemos, llegar, llegue, lleguemos, right? So it changes here, it changes here, it stays the same here, right? But it changes here, right? So just take a quick note of these. You can write them down and learn them off, right? For most irregular verbs, the present subjunctive is formed by removing the O from the first person, and then you add the subjunctive endings. Right? So pongo, quiero, tengo, veo, conozco, hago, traigo. right? It'll become ponga, quiera, tenga, vea, conozca, haga, traiga, right? These 6 verbs are totally irregular, and they don't apply to the rule above, because you can't just say doi and then you drop the y or something and add the endings, right? So just learn these. These are very important. You can just pause the video and take a note of them if you like, right? The perfect subjunctive. This is how it's formed, right? Just use the irregular here, aya, and the participle. Right? Now the imperfect subjunctive is formed by adding the endings below, right? Now you can either add ara or ase, era or ese. Now more commonly used is ara and era, right? But I've just included ese and ase, right? You can interchange them, but I believe ara is used, right?
The sun sets, right? Salir. Remember we have salir there, right? Terrible handwriting, but that's okay. So we would have gotten salgo, right? In its normal first person. So we drop the O and we get salga, right? Please take a note of these, right? I often used to confuse cuando, right? So I hope this helps you all, right? After verbs influence and judgment, such as es importante que decir, obligar a hacer o sería que, we use the subjunctive, right? After para que, es muy importante que se use el subjunctive, right? So she's learning Spanish in order to get a Spanish-speaking boyfriend. Ella aprende español para que pueda conseguir un novio hispanohablante. And please know that Spanish-speaking can also be used with the word hispanoparlante. Right? But I think hispanohablante is more used. Right? It's used for necessity, permission, right? Condition, and after como si and si. These are very important. Right? Si fuera rico, compraría una casa. If I were rich, I would buy a house. Right? So si fuera, because this would have come from fueron, right? In the third person portrait, and we add era. Right? Please note, after ojalá, right? It's a very common use, right? If, right? I wish I had passed the exam. Ojalá hubiera aprobado el examen. Right? The subjunctive is very, very, very. Imperative. This is used generally, I believe, in the paper 2, right? It's just really commands, right? So I've made a little table here, alright? So this is the positive, alright? There are 3 ways of using it. That's the tu, the usted, and the ustedes, right? So just note the endings really quickly, and then obviously learn the negatives of that, alright? And you can follow the notes that I've made here, alright? These verbs are irregular, right? So di, as, ve, pon, sal, se, ten, win, right? So at la cama, ten cuidado, right? Be careful, make up the bed, etc. This is very important here, right? The first person plural command, let's. If you want to say let's do anything, use the nosotros form of the subjunctive. So you say compremos comida hoy. Let's buy food today, right? So this is the ending for the nosotros form of the subjunctive, right? I remember watching Dora and I always say como vámonos, and I never understood why was it vámonos. I couldn't understand where the word came from, right? So it is vámonos because it would have been vamos, which means we go, and then it's reflexive, so you have nos, so we drop the s. So you got vámonos, right? That's
Thank you for watching. Say ten win, right? So haz la cama, ten cuidado, right? Be careful, make up the bed, etc. This is very important here, right? The first person plural command, let's. If you want to say let's do anything, use the nosotros form of the subjunctive. So you say compremos comida hoy. Let's buy food today, right? So this is the ending for the nosotros form of the subjunctive, right? I remember watching Dora and I always say como vámonos, and I never understood why was it vámonos. I couldn't understand where the word came from, right? So it is vámonos because it would have been vamos, which means we go, and then it's reflexive, so you have nos, so we drop the s. So you got vamos. I would like to also include that one ought to practice Spanish in order to become a lot better, right? And I'd like to give thanks to Miss Friday, who used to teach Old Tech, and Mr. Ashley Ramita, who used to teach Presentation College but now teaches at Southern Community College. Those are my two lessons teachers, and they gave me a lot of inspiration to learn Spanish. They helped me to learn Spanish a lot. They've taught me old school, that is hardcore grammar as a foundation, and then vocabulary comes after, right? A lot of people ask me why I'm doing these videos for free. I just have a passion for Spanish, and I just hope that everybody can learn Spanish as and not see it as a task, right? And not see it as a subject, but as a language to be learned. Well, you're just learning a language as opposed to you're doing maths or physics. That's a subject, right? So I just hope that these videos can aid students in becoming more interested in Spanish and learn Spanish and know that it's fun and it's not something that is extraordinary. So that's basically the reason why I'm doing these videos for free.